Did you hear my jet flyby or no?
Nope.
No.
I don't know if you guys hear that, but I don't
Yes, we
hear
Yep.
that.
did. Can you hear us?
I don't think you
No,
can.
No.
I can't hear you. I can't. It says mute.
What
I'm
is
gonna give it one
going
more
This is
try.
bizarre.
on? Oh,
But you're acting like you can hear us. I'm so confused. Hi, and welcome to the Johnny Random Show. Today we talked about topics like the spy balloon that's going over United States right now and what is going on there. We don't have a ton of facts yet. We talked about sending those F16's to Ukraine that they requested, and kind of the boldness for them to request that after just receiving tanks that we said we weren't going to give them. We talked about, oh goodness, Nikki Haley, Ron DeSantis. We talked about Ilhan Omar. We went all into some like insider stuff of what's going on for 2024 and currently the turmoil in the House of Representatives. So we hope you enjoy this episode. All right, so let's jump right in today. So last week I made a prediction on the Super Bowl that it was going to be the 49ers and the Bengals, and both of those teams lost. So it will be the Eagles and the Chiefs. I was 100% wrong in my predictions. So that's par for the course, I guess, for my predictions, on this show for football predictions anyway. And then so today's episode, we've got lots of topics to talk about. The first thing that just sort of recently came into the news, has gotten a lot of traction, or a lot of people are talking about, is the spy balloons from China. And we were just talking about it before we got on here. Like, how do we know it's from China? I assume it's the flight path, we're assuming, came from China. Why it wasn't detected in Alaska, we don't know, or shot down in Alaska, and why we're just letting it continue to go. I'm not sure that either. I think right now, by this afternoon, I think at noon, which is when we're recording this, it was supposed to be over Missouri by now. So I'm seeing articles that are like, we're fully within our right to shoot it down and whatever. But part of me thinks like anybody that has TikTok on their phone is they're already being spied on by China. So why are we worried about a balloon floating over us? I mean, I guess there's some degree of like, you're not getting, mapping the terrain and stuff. I don't know, who knows, but it's certainly something that, is concerning to a lot of people. If you're concerned about, China as a threat, which I think most people are, they're not a whole lot of friendlies in America these days to the idea of the Chinese Communist Party, at least. I mean, Chinese people are probably wonderful, but Dad, did you see anything on this balloon that?
That's the thing. I haven't seen enough by the administration of, you know, what level of concern they have, other than they don't seem to be concerned, which concerns me that they're not concerned.
That's
Um,
yeah.
that's the thing. I would think that, it almost seems like, okay, you hear this thing of like putting up a test balloon, we float this thought, and if it gets shot down, we don't go with it. But if it
Mm-hmm.
but if nobody does anything, then we go like, oh yeah, let's just, push it a little bit further. And so I'm looking at that pattern saying like, okay, they kind of like barely skirt, Alaska, and they get closer and closer, and nobody does anything and nobody notices or whatever. And then they, you know, say, well, okay, they went okay, so now let's see if we just kind of drift down towards, mid-America and, just take a look there and, see what they do,
I saw
I
something.
don't know what the thinking is. I keep thinking, why don't we get a, C-140 with a grapple hook, fly by,
Pick it up and take it
pick it
back
up.
to China.
Well, either that or, drag it out over the ocean or something, or somewhere, away from the population out the desert and bring it down, kind of thing. It just, you'd think that somebody would come up with some idea at least to be sure that it's not a threat, or, you know.
Yeah.
Again, I don't have a comprehension of the size of it. It seems to be pretty big if you can see it from 60,000 feet.
The size of 3 school buses is what it's reported as.
Ah, so you're just not going
Wow.
to pull it into the C-140 very well as it goes
No.
by.
Gobble it up, just
Gobble it
I saw that apparently the Biden administration has been knowing about this for like a couple weeks now and hasn't said anything publicly. And it's kind of like we have policies in place, right, for like this and that situation. If this happens, this is what happens. It's like public record so that everybody knows, other countries know that if you do this, whatever. Do we not have something for a spy balloon? Like, do we not have this written down somewhere that if that what do we do? Like, I don't understand. We're not letting France fly spy balloons over us. I mean, are we? I don't think
Yeah,
so. I mean,
they
we
just don't
are.
want to. What would they care?
Well, yeah, exactly. So why are you doing this? So we should have some sort of like written doctrine, and if we do, and that hasn't been done, like that's the part that I'm interested in researching next, and maybe we'll have some more explanations for you on the next show next week. So no promises, but we might know
Yeah.
a lot more.
Well, the
The
fact that
next
they
show.
also sent one across South America
Oh yeah.
also makes me think, well, this is the old spy thing where you have three, um, satellites up and you triangulate, you know,
Uh-huh.
what messages and such are going on, and
Yeah,
you have that.
signal
They've got
collection.
3 points. They've got the point of origin, the satellite that's floating across, the one that's floating across South America, and you just you just listen in, eavesdrop, you collect data and
Hmm.
see who gets a gets alerted and what happens and that type of thing. Um, so I it's one of those things. Do you trust China? No.
Yeah, no, I think we should. I mean, it could be a sense of like pushing to see how far they can go as well. If we do this, those like tiny escalations. What was it? Was it a year ago or 2 years ago when they had the sonic missile that they tested? Which we're making
Supersonic.
supersonic missiles. They're making supersonic missiles. The fact that they actually did one, and it's like we had no idea that they were at that technological capabilities yet. So it's like you put a country that has supersonic missiles that can go faster than we could shoot it down, and they're mapping our territory with these balloons. It seems very ominous. Like it really, really does, because it's so closed off over there that you don't know what's going on. And okay, we
Mhm.
talk a lot about like we need to get our manufacturing base up so that we're not depending on them. But you know, if they shoot several hypersonic missiles at us with a high degree of accuracy for whatever targets they're going for, I mean, then they attack Taiwan, and then they do that, and they just open up,
Mhm.
the world. I mean, it's certainly a degree of like nervousness to me, because like if there's any country, I mean, they've been over the last 10 years ramping up their military production, and their budgets aren't anywhere near what ours is, but we just dump money into contractors. And so our spending is higher, but what you're getting out of that spending is a lot less, because it's going into the pockets of, the donors and the Lockheed Martin and the contractors and subcontractors and stuff, whatever. So you're getting, good results, but it's also sort of a very crony system that we have in
Mhm.
America. And so we just waste dollars. So it's not apples to apples comparison. They may be able to
Mhm.
get more out of their
Yeah.
military spending.
Well, again, considering the size of this thing, you wonder, why couldn't there be a bomb in there, and why aren't we, if we don't know, why would we, and what do we do the next time?
Yeah.
We've let this one float across. Do we,
Hmm.
2 weeks from now, another one go, and we just don't do anything. Something just seems like we're not thinking this through,
I
Yeah.
believe
because they've set a precedent.
we could rule out nuclear though, because the nuclear radiation, it'd be pretty hard to mask that signature. So I think we probably pointed detectors at that and assured ourselves that it's not a threat. The military has come out and basically advised that it's not a threat. So they are apparently on board with the idea that this is an off-course Chinese weather balloon, and they're just. But I mean, I don't know how you
Yeah.
test all these things. I don't know why they would have such confidence in that conclusion.
Yeah.
I think when you fumble the ball and then, yeah, we're confident that this is not a threat. When in the back of your mind, everybody's running around with their hair on fire. Like, this is a bad, I don't know how we got here, but like, we need to assure the public that I just I don't see this as like just being like, this is just a non-issue. I think it's pretty
Yeah.
serious, but so speaking of military things and issues and stuff, F16's, there was another push this like last week we talked about tanks going over there. We're manufacturing tanks and we sent the old ones already to them, shipped them over there. And so immediately the Ukrainian government was like, well, these tanks are going to not be as effective if we don't have air support. So we need F-16s. And that was like, there was three things. It was Patriot missiles or no, tanks or no, F-16s or no. Like those were like three hard no's that we were asked about at the beginning of the war. And we said, no, no, no. Of course, we're training people for the Patriot missiles. So we already kind of like said yes there effectively. And then we sent tanks. And now this conversation about the F-16s is like pressure is like, well, they're not going to be as effective. I just see that we're going to give them F-16s or we're going to build some for them or something. I mean, like, I just see that coming down the pipe. I mean, by this summer, they will have F-16s in this war. So just another escalation. And, for me, my part, we talked about last week. I mean, like, if you can do it death by 1,000 cuts and just slowly do this, slowly cook the frog in the pot, boil it, then you're okay. But if this was all super drastic up front, it might have had, instigated some, you have to let the internals crumble in Russia as we're doing it slowly. So that way they're not going to lash out at us. I think that's my take. But if you guys have a take on that, fire away on that. It's just something I saw and as another escalation. So then,
Yeah, I just think it's a pretty risky thing. We did it with Germany, blend lease things and then slowly build up. We did it in Vietnam. We sent advisors and then we sent, more and more troops, and we've done it. We've done it a number of times throughout history.
kind of
It still all ends up, in war. So we'll see.
Yeah.
It does, but it has always kept the war off our soil, except for Pearl Harbor. So,
yeah, it works until it doesn't, right?
And but it also works to give us the lead in the war.
Time.
So,
yeah,
lead time, because basically they're already establishing Ukraine is the good guys, Russia's the bad guys, and they're very strong on that narrative. Just like in World War II, we knew the Germans were villains before we got in there, and it turned out we were right in that the Nazis truly were. And many of the soldiers had been hardened against human rights, even in the lower ranks, due to the indoctrination that they were using and how that was teaching people to be less than human and by viewing others as less than human. So, anyways.
Yeah, there's times when it's worked, at times when it didn't work well because we did too little for too long, and weren't really committed and lied to our own people and whatever. So at some point you either commit or you get out, and you can be death by 1,000 cuts to yourself rather to your enemies. So.
Yeah, certainly drain away our resources that we may need in certain cases. So, okay, so turning back to the home front, earlier this week too, I saw a lot of people talking about like we've been talking about recession and depression and housing market crash since this channel started over a year ago. We did a deep dive on the housing market crash. And to varying degrees, these things have kind of happened. The housing markets continued to skyrocket and continued to go off the rails. And now it's sort of crashing back to earth. The Times to, the house time on market is like gone way up. But I don't see that you see a crash. I mean, you maybe lost $10,000 of value, but after you just went up over $100,000 value in the course of 2 years, to go down 10 is okay. You went up 100%, you took off 10. I mean, it's not like a crash. And I think I had to go back and listen to the episode and see what specifically predictions we kind of made. But I have a growing sense that that's what this recession that we're going into. Davos finished up and they all consensus agreed that we're going into a recession in 2023. There's going to be a recession. And the article that really caught my attention this week, that kind of the impetus for putting it on the list of things that we talk about, was at no time in history has there ever been a consensus that we're going to have a recession. And to me, that means that everybody thinks that we're going to have a recession. It's like if you're not planning for a disaster to happen, then a disaster will just come and take away everything from you, like whatever. You're not prepared for these things. But if you sense that a recession or a disaster is coming, you buy insurance on your house, you do all the things, you put things out there to hedge your bets. So I saw many banks are sitting on hundreds of millions of dollars of cash because they want to have reserves if loans start defaulting, if things start happening, if the people start getting laid off in the economy, whatever. And so there's all this money sitting on the sidelines. And it's almost like instead of going into the recession, it's almost like what happened when we couldn't get out of the recession in 2008. You guys remember we were in the recession for a long, long time, and the stock market started coming back and everything, but everybody felt like we were still in a recession for like years and years and years. And even, Obama, ran on the economy is back. And I just remember a lot of people going like, what are you talking about? Like, it doesn't feel like it's back,
Mm-hmm.
But in reality, a lot of that money was sitting on the sidelines. And then when Trump came in, did the tax cuts, just we're gonna, everything's great now. It's like people are like, okay, let's spend this money, like use this, whatever. And it actually caused the economy to move forward. I feel like that's what we're going into, is a malaise period, because everybody assumes there's going to be a recession. And that, in effect, avoids a recession, but also creates a recession. So it's like this weird,
I
weird
think
loop.
if people are changing what they're doing, their habits, their behaviors, we would avoid some of the recession type things. So
Right.
people around here are buying chickens,
Right.
to have eggs, because eggs are so expensive. People are selling their used cars, but I priced my car. I bought it 7 years ago, 8 years ago. Doesn't have very many miles on it, but I could sell it for what I bought it for 8 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, pretty close, if not full price for what I bought it for, which is crazy. It's a Toyota. It's just a RAV4. It's not, top of the line type thing, but I I can basically get back what I
100%.
paid for it, which is really kind of weird. It's got low mileage, that type of thing. It's in good shape. But I've seen people trying to sell my car, exact same car, for the same price or a few $1,000s less. I mean, like $3,000 less than what I originally paid for it. I was like, I negotiated, got a good deal and all, but still, it just seems so strange to see that. So people are doing things um, to they're buying used cars, was what I'm saying, instead of buying new cars. So they've changed their habits, which has caused those prices to go up, which means the person who's selling it is still um, trying to make money as well,
Right.
as part of that. So they'll have cash to use for things, maybe selling that second car or whatever. So I just see that some hope that people aren't just going out and spending crazy and just going to throw us into the into the
into
pit.
the recession. Yeah.
Yeah.
Matt, well, I'll ask you on your second if you think we're going to housing market, but on Dad, your point about the used car market, it's funny because you said that, because the fact that you couldn't get a lot of the microchips and a lot of the issues from the pandemic caused the new market to stagnate. There just wasn't as much available, and people did change their habits and they wanted these used cars because of, okay, we're the so the price of those went up. But now you're seeing companies like Carvana was like, oh, the used car market is like awesome. We'll buy your car sight unseen, ship it to us, whatever, blah, 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 blah. And so now there's this huge inventory of all these used cars that they thought they could sell in this hot market, but they overbuilt their inventory. And now they're talking about Carvana is talking on the verge of bankrupting. They lost, like, I don't remember what the percentage of the value on their stocks was, but their stock price plummeted because it there was this like reckoning where like you've extended yourself as a company and you're not getting the profits that you said.
Yeah,
It wasn't as
I looked
hot
at
as
some
you
of their
think it
cars
was.
too. They're pretty pricey.
Yeah, well,
For a
they
used
have to
car.
because they bought them at the in the peak, in the
Yeah.
gold rush when things were good, and now there's this over inventory, and so now it's like, okay, now the demand for cars has even more plummeted because everybody's changing their habits even further. Okay, we're not going to buy new cars, we're not going to even buy old cars, we're going to stick with what we've got for a year, whatever. Okay, so now the supply and demand curve changed real dramatically.
Yeah.
So now there's going to be a flood of cheap cars on the used car market because Carvana's bankrupt, trying to get out from under all of this stuff to stay solvent. And so you're going to see the used car market crash probably pretty soon, I would imagine. And that might be a headline at some point, like used car market crashes. This is the beginning of the recession, and it's like, you're just trying to be clickbaity, but like, I think it's part of like just the ebb and flow of how that's going to avoid a recession in a way. A
Yeah,
recession to
that
me
hive
is like,
mindset that goes wrong after a while.
yeah. So, okay, Matt, what do you think we're going to recession?
So I think we are, but as far as like all of these different indicators, I don't think that's the real problem. So markets adjust. Markets adjust to different factors. And now what we've got is a market that has adjusted to two parent income. So there's two people in the house earning in order to be able to afford that house. The market used to be adjusted to one person earning, and then the other person was doing labor that saved money. So there wasn't as much income. So, but what happened was, okay, so all these two income families are then chasing this housing, and the housing has gone crazy over time. It's adjusted. The problem is that that's unsustainable for a culture to be in, because that limits cash flow. It's a trap. And so we've got the two income trap going on. We've got the real issue is the demotivation to labor. Nobody is actually motivated to work or work hard because of, again, when two incomes are chasing it, who's taking care of the kids? Well, a hired professional, whether the schools or a nanny or something like that. So now these children are basically highly demotivated. So our problem, what's going to eventually lead to our collapse, is not going to be one thing or another thing, just like random market adjustments and things like that. It's going to be painful for people, and they're going to bring individual people down. But what's going to really bring down the house of cards is going to be the system that we've set up, that has caused so much fatherlessness, so much alienation, and so much lack of purpose and fulfillment in work. Those are the things that are eventually going to bring a collapse. And I can't tell you where that's going to be, because just like in the body, like the body can handle tremendous amounts of salt and get rid of it, right? But what if it's got this other factor, and the other factor? Like, it's incredibly complex, and the economy is the same way. We can metabolize a housing crash, or even a small like bump. We don't know what's going to happen here. We could handle what happened in 2008. We did. But the real question is what's too much? What's that final straw? And that's what I'm worried about, because we're setting up some really unhealthy fundamentals um in the American body, and not just the body politic, but the people themselves. The people ourselves are beginning to be overtaxed, and we're running into energy flow issues, like cash flow issues in a business. Like, the energy of the people is the people themselves, and how they have a motivation to succeed. And we're really low energy. We don't have a lot left to manage those types of things. It's like when you have like 5% body fat. What are you going to do if there's suddenly like just like a week you can't eat? You're going to die. you know
Yeah.
that's my concern.
Yeah, now you're speaking my language. Like the part I love, if a country, no, if America does not have a path to the middle class
Hmm.
that works,
Yeah.
then the American dream is not American dream. People don't see it, people don't sense it, that it's not real. And that takes all sorts of forms. But like that
Hmm.
sums up a lot to me. If people don't feel like there's a path to the middle class, and then the whole country breaks down. And what you're talking about is, we went through the recession and we made it through. Financially speaking, we made it through. But you have so many people turning to like exploring the ideas of democratic socialism and even socialism, because there's this sense that we're losing our path to the middle class.
Hmm.
Is the ability for people to move socially
Hmm.
is getting smaller and smaller. And if we go through another recession, or a half-hearted recession, kind of like I explained, where it's just like ebb and flow, it's not good, it's just like a malaise period, it's going to add to that sense of we are stuck in this rut. And if you're poor, you will stay poor. You can't get to the middle class. If you're middle class, things just price of eggs and things keep going up and up and up. And, what is going on here? So there's this frustration in the middle class. There's this desperation in the lower class. And
Yeah.
then the upper class, it's kind of like, we need to probably throw in some bones, like, and it's not sustainable. And I think that's what you're speaking to. So
Yeah.
whether it's this recession or this non-recession, I honestly think that, in years, 2 or 3 years from now, we're going to be calling this like the mirage recession, or somebody's going to come up with a fancy name of like, where it felt like a mirage, like a recession, but it really wasn't in the numbers, but it was the sense of a recession.
A
And
pre-session.
pre-session.
We're in the
Yes.
pre-session is what we're in.
Yes, where they're carrying the casket for their pre-session. um, um, okay, so let's that's the depressing part. So let's get on to the fun sections. So we've got a couple things. We're going to talk about DeSantis again. We're going to talk about Kamala Harris, her future, and Nikki Haley, who's set to announce for presidential politics. So this is going to be the next couple things we're going to go through here. So we'll start with DeSantis banning the African American course. I think it was in a college, right? I think it's public universities. I had a little brain note to like go back and check what exactly he did. But basically the question I have for you guys is like good or bad. And I'll go ahead and go first on this, because I was on both sides of this at some point through the week. When I first looked into it, I was like, that's bad because, when the government tells you what you can and can't do, it's like, it's just not a
Right.
good precedent, just from the precedent. I mean, like, I know he's standing up for the wokeness, and I know he's trying to run for president. So is he just trying to send a message? Is he throwing red meat, whatever? But as I started looking into
It
more
didn't
and
strike
more of
me as
the
that tight.
details, like, Florida does teach very accurate history in their curriculums, and this course was just very just identitarian, and it wasn't a good course. And the fact that he did stand up and they backed down like to the pressure, like, was a victory. And somebody was saying like he picked this battle because he knew he could win it, because it made sense, and it was a strategic choice. It wasn't like he was just, what woke thing are we going to attack? Oh, like whatever. Oh, we're going to get
Hot
this one,
button.
And so I respect him on that level. But I do think that it could be damaging, like if
Yeah.
you're trying to, I mean, because it's so easy for the Democrats to just grab, oh, it's banning African American studies. Oh, here's the Republicans that don't like black people, like here we go again, and so it just plays right into their hands. But I think DeSantis thinks of himself as sort of like Trumpy, where he's like, okay, you come at me, I'm going to come back at you, and I'm going to come back at you with facts. But I don't think he has the loudspeaker and commands the attention like Trump does. Trump just commanded like the camera, just boom, right on his face. DeSantis, it's kind of like, okay, I heard this guy talking about wokeness, whatever, and I agree with it, and then I don't remember who that was. The name DeSantis doesn't stick. It was like Trump was like, you knew what Trump said. So I don't know if it's going to work for him as well. It's probably good that he did this before he announced, shore up a little like the support and everything, and then announce. But I'm sure it's going to come back up again. So I was just curious what you guys thought of that.
I really get the impression with DeSantis, he's really looking at what can I get done for good, not what is going to politically be expedient. And he knows that if he does his research and he backs these things up, that the people of Florida are gonna appreciate it. He may not be able to get beyond Florida any type of like basically any support outside of Florida, but he knows that the people of Florida will support well thought out, non-reactionary courses of action to try to do good. But I do feel that this is sort of dangerous, like you said, because the whole thing with misinformation. Basically, what he was doing was essentially what the censors at Facebook have purported to have been doing for this whole time. But what he's done is he's like targeted it with actual real facts that span multiple opinions, not just like, oh, this one person thinks that this is misinformation, so they work at this company, so we're going to label it such. The British Medical Journal got labeled their article as misinformation, and were accused of being a online blog. The British Medical Journal from 1840. Yeah. So, anyways, yeah. So this misinformation thing is something that they weaponized. This is being used well, but it's still a dangerous thing to do, because there is obviously a lot of misinformation in that course that was trying to be slipped in under the radar, and so the government got involved and was like, okay, you can't just slip a bunch of poison in here and go unnoticed. But at the same time, it's one of those things where it'd be better if people voted with their feet. The problem is that it's helping, that type of material is helping to radicalize people by giving them lies to work with, nothing but straight lies that are unresearched, and hoping that they won't actually research it themselves. So I'm really mixed on whether it was right or wrong, but I don't think that his motives are political in that same way that Trump's were, just whatever is expedient. So that's my take on it.
Yeah. Dad, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I always concerned about, censorship because, what it is, but at the same time, we've seen such crazy things, trying to be put in libraries, that is children's books that talks about, yeah, the way to do certain sexual activities, and you go like, what is that doing in a, or drag queens at the library, and you go like, why?
Yeah.
So there, there's reasonable censorship, and then there's things that have been blown out of proportion. It's difficult because we've seen so many things that have been banned over the years, and some things I agreed with, and some things was kind of like, really? Okay. So, when I was in high school, and we're talking about, 50 some years ago, there were things in our high school that were totally inappropriate back 50 years ago, that somebody felt was, appropriate to read. And I just, to this day, having been, one of those students that got this book that I was supposed to give a book report on, going like, this is just know,
This
pretty
is
far out
horrendous.
there,
Yeah.
type thing. So there's people that have been trying to push an agenda and feel like you need to know these things, when in fact, I think there's a more delicate way to handle those kinds of things. Or
Yeah.
in the case of just out and out propaganda
Mhm.
that's out there. And there's times for censorship
Yeah.
because of that, because we are um, it's one thing for making it, putting it in the library, making it available, this is stuff. It's another thing to part make it part of the curriculum as if it was true,
Mhm.
and persuade that way, rather than this is just a view of a particular person. I think there's a delicate line there.
Mhm.
Um, I went to a college for graduate school that had a tendency to introduce things, and the professor would try to stay neutral, just say, and I'm thinking like, I'm paying you money, to teach me. I would like your opinion on this. I mean, I can read this and I can form my own opinion of it, but I would like for your input too. Why do you think this is good or bad? Not just as this is neutral. Stuff is not neutral, and you have an opinion on it. Why don't you tell me what your opinion is? Oh, we don't want to
Yeah.
persuade you. Well, I'm an adult. I will weigh out what you say, but I'd like to hear what your thinking is, because you've obviously looked at it longer than I have. You work with this material all the time. So there's a way to um, it almost sounds like against censorship, but um, an adult needs to hear stuff, and not necessarily neutral, but not necessarily forced either. There's a
Yeah.
Right.
tone that's in there, I think, for education, that's allows other people to disagree with the professor, disagree with what's being said, to look at different things. That's there too, and also, if it's like Holocaust denial or something like that, to say like, you know, this is a minority opinion,
Mhm.
and this is,
Yeah.
whatever. I don't know. It's a challenge.
Yeah, I think that this show we try, at least for me, I really try to be a show where you could watch this no matter what your political leanings are, because I want to present these are the facts as we know them right now. More could come to light; it could change our opinions on it, but these are our opinions about those facts, as we
Mhm.
understand them, and just be able to reason through what the thoughts are, and not to be condescending towards somebody who may have a different opinion. I feel like that's valuable conversation, and I think that's what more people need to be having, those types of conversations in general. Obviously, that's why I started a channel about it, so
Yeah.
that it could be a forum for conversations to think through things, fairly, or at least as fair as possible. I mean, we're going to come with our opinions and our ideas and all those types of things, and what we think is good and bad. But I think anybody be able to listen to this, as an adult, should be able to understand that, like, that's your opinion, okay, and I have, can understand the facts and understand, their opinion on those things as well. So yeah, very, very true. Well said, all that. So I'm gonna throw a plot twist in you guys. I meant to move this up in the list, but we didn't talk about it, but it kind of ties in a little bit to kind of what we're talking about now. So the House Republicans voted to remove Ilhan Omar from the Foreign Affairs Committee, and George Santos obviously is coming. A lot of things are coming to light about him, on his campaign violations, and basically, my theory is that he didn't even think he was gonna be um, was gonna be elected. So he was given a lot of committee assignments because McCarthy needed all the allies he could get to get the Speaker of the House, you know, vote. Once he got that, and once all this stuff came to light, everybody's kind of like pulling off. Nobody's on the Santos train at all, hardly. And so he's probably, like we had talked about before, going to get indicted. And I don't want this to be like every week there's a George Santos update, but like this guy is crazy and fascinating to me. But he's getting pulled from his, or he's getting he recused himself from the seat. So he gave those up voluntarily. So I think that's a good development. But I just wonder what you guys thought about them pulling Ilhan Omar off of the Foreign Affairs Committee. And if you think that was the right move, or if that was sort of like a targeted, tit for tat type thing. I know AOC is all like, this is targeting women of color, and the Republicans, pulling all this racist stuff into it. But I mean, I think that, whether you believe that or not, I don't necessarily. So, but I do think that, my personal opinion is that people say dumb stuff all the time, right? People like Adam Schiff, who quantifiably lied and quantifiably has misrepresented facts, should be removed from committee seats, right? Ilhan Omar, who has an opinion about the Jews and Palestine relation, should not get removed based on having an opinion. That's like Ted Cruz having an opinion about whatever, and then the Democrats just pulling him off a committee seat because he has opinion about whatever situation is going on in the world. Now, if he has lied about something that is demonstrable, then yes, there's grounds for removing. So I don't think it has anything to do with racism, but I think that it was a wrong move. I think it was a stupid move, to be honest. We're so divided as a country. You should be able to pull people in and have those conversations, and it gives you a platform to debate. Everybody knows that's connected to political circles, Ilhan Omar. So if you get into a conversation with Ilhan Omar and you win, so to speak, the conversation, more persuaded, then that looks good for you. If you just cut her from a committee, it looks like you're running from a fight. You're just targeting somebody that has opinions that, like, they canceled her, basically. So that's my take on it. So I was just wondering if you guys had any thoughts. I know I literally live as we're talking about added to the list. But if you guys have any thoughts on that, and then we'll switch back to Nicki Haley. Dan?
I tend to agree with you. I think before I would give an opinion, I'd like to look a little deeper, because I think there are some questions about her leaking information and her being on such a sensitive committee. It's not that she can't have her opinion in certain places. It's because of her views, is she a threat and to security, to national security. But it's one of those things you have to be able to, person's innocent until proven guilty. If she's guilty, then and done wrong, then again, it goes down to what can she be convicted of as a member of Congress, So there's that challenge too. But it's one of our things. Our political system allows us to be able to do that, and if the other members of the, it's kind of like it's their house and their rules, and they can do what they want to do, whether we like it or not. So the other side of me says, if they don't like her, she's too far out there, then
partially a question of who can work together.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the frustrating thing, is because they'll always say that, a Republican is too far out there, and then, just decide. So anybody that has outside of the thinking gets canceled and taken off committees. And I think that George Santos was one of the votes, the tie-breaking vote, and it was like he's put on a council, and then after he casts the vote, he gets recuses himself, and it's like, this guy is a total fraud. It's crazy person, and yet he gets to make the final. Like, it just proves to the insanity of the system, I think, in a lot of ways, the way we do it, and the way that just the lack of I don't want to say decorum. I'm sort of an anti-institutionalist at heart, sort of a rebel at heart. But I also think that you have to have some level of like credibility to be able to govern. You have to have some sort of credibility. I know that, as much as we rail against, certain aspects of maybe the justice system or certain different things that seem unjust or whatever. I mean, like, but due process, you can't just throw it out the window whenever it's your side, and it's a fine line. I think that's the problem. And like you said, like, yeah, you can do it. So, I mean, it's legal within the system. So, but what precedent does that send? What message does that send? That's the part that it's like the decorum factor to me. So,
but that's
yeah.
my question. Is this out of the ordinary, or is this business as usual? So this system, like you're saying, the system is problematic. I've seen really well-developed systems that I understood well, having to face things that seem pretty bizarre and handle them in ways that also look very bizarre from the outside. If I didn't have the information that I knew about how the system works, I would think it was insane. But that's the thing. I don't think that we're close enough to make that call about whether this is a good system or not. And I think this is actually fairly normal, that people are added to, removed from committees based on whether they can work with people, whether they have said things that make others question whether they would be loyal to America in a fight. And if that's the case, like if it came down to like whose side is she going to be on if there was a war, and that was a question, then I would definitely think that removing her from the Security Council would make a whole lot of sense. But
Yeah.
that's not
I
my
don't think that's the
I think we
question.
have seen it too with Matthew's what's her name? Um
Her name? When was
her
this?
name. Just recently, as far as being on a committee, because she was such a strong Trump supporter, and the January 6th
Green.
situation.
What's her name? Green. Something Green.
Matthews Green, yeah, something like
Yeah,
that.
something
Something like that. I think that she
yeah.
ran into those same problems because she was a
I
January
so
6th
this
denier
this is
and
where it's
Trump
different.
supporter and things like that. So you
They're
have different things coming up.
yeah, they're assigned committee seats, or they're not given committee seats even though they should be up for them. This was voted off once she already was on it. So it's a different precedence. So we're talking about she wasn't given a committee seat for something that she requested for, or something that they had that she had been on previously. When there was a new turnover, she wasn't given that. So these are like different things. We're talking about they actually took a vote on the committee and kicked her off of the committee. So it's like it's not somebody above, the House of Representatives, I mean, the Speaker of the House or whatever, divvying up these committees and assigning and doing all the wheeling and dealing, and you don't get a seat and whatever, blah, blah, blah. That's normal and that's par for the course. What is abnormal is to kick another member off of the seat, like off of a committee that they were given, previously. So that's what I'm talking about. This seems much more, that's why the unprecedented nature, and the lack of decorum. I'll have to go back and look at the facts, and this whole block might just have to in the next episode, like, okay, we were all wrong about the facts on this, whatever, but like these are the facts as I understand them, and I threw it on there, so we're gonna move past it. We can't waste a lot of time talking about something that we don't. I thought I had more of the facts in my head, but as we were talking, some things kind of come to light here. So
Okay.
there is also talk this week about Kamala Harris being dropped from the Biden tickets on the next go round. There's always been these sort of rumors. There was rumors that Pence wasn't going to go with Trump on the next, time when he ran against Biden. So she's like one of the least popular vice presidents in modern American history. So it's getting brought up. It's getting played. I don't think that there's much in there. There's not much there. It could be. A lot of people are talking about putting Pete Buttigieg in that vice president spot, which, he's bungled all three of the crises that have happened as the transportation secretary from what was it, the tankers, like 40 tankers off of the, whatever, like transportation crisis. I mean, it's just the FAA, crashing. It's just catastrophe after catastrophe after catastrophe. And he's like, I am like he's so not technical or involved. He just wants to. He's on there as like a figurehead, like
Yeah.
Mhm.
doesn't
Wow.
care about what's happening on his watch. So I think it would be a terrible choice. So I'm going to lead into this next question. You can answer both of them at the same time, but I feel like Nikki Haley is Kamala Harris, but the rights version of that. She's always exactly what the donors want. She's a woman of color. She's got Indian parents. She is, she just checks all the identity politics boxes, and she has positioned herself and talked about running for president for almost a decade. So everybody knew this was coming. She's got her donors lined up behind her because these are people that, if she gets elected, they think that she can win and she's going to enact the policies that they want to see in place. So she's very much a donor centric type candidate. I'm not saying she doesn't have good qualities or attributes or hasn't done great things for South Carolina, but she is no DeSantis, that's for sure. And she does give me a lot of Kamala vibes. And so I don't think that's going to last. So yeah, so we'll talk about Kamala and then Kamala of the right, Nikki Haley. You guys can, do you guys agree with me on those things, or you think that Biden's going to drop Kamala Harris? Matt, you can go ahead first. You look ready.
Biden's
Don't
gonna
look
drop
ready.
Kamala Harris. That's I mean, she's worse than he is. I mean, because he is just incompetent but likable, right? He wanders all over the place, but people just feel sorry for him. With Pamela, wow. How about Kamala Harris? She
Don't do this to me.
what? But anyways, she manages to say things that don't make any real sense and goes in a circle in what she says and makes children uncomfortable. There you go.
Okay, so she's not got the child vote. So you think
No, she does not have
he's
the
gonna
child vote.
it's gonna drop her. What about Nikki Haley? You favorable for the Nikki Haley run? Are you excited about Nikki Haley 2024?
I don't even know who she is.
Oh, okay. So she's the governor of South Carolina.
No, that's
Sorry, I
what
should
I
have set that
know.
up a little bit. Yeah, and
No, that's
she
what I know. I'm just like, I mean, do
did
I
she
know
run last
anything?
time?
I've not lived anywhere close to where I don't think she ran last time. But if she did, she was not a front runner.
Yeah,
She did
and
not gain
she's
much traction.
I think I view her a lot in the sort of like um kind of the vein of like Newt Gingrich when he ran the last time. People knew about him, people were favorable on the donor class, but just didn't have any theory of the case. Like, why should you be president? What are the issues that you're addressing? I mean, like, that's what
Right.
Donald Trump just encapsulated, like American carnage and, make America great again, and brought the conversation to himself, where she's just sort of like, yeah, you're a popular person within the Republican Party. Does that mean that you should run for president? Like, what gives you any sort of differentiating? Like, yeah, a lot of donors and people with a lot of money think that you'd make a great president. What, what makes you presidential? My personal opinion is I think that DeSantis and Trump should just fight it out. Everyone else should get out of the way because it's just a distraction. You're not going to win. We're not going to have President Nikki Haley. And if she's trying to be a vice president, or something like that, just to raise her sort of like, name recognition, that might be
Credentials.
what she's doing or something. But like, I just don't see it going anywhere personally. But Dad, about you, do you think you can answer either of those questions in either order?
Yeah, I would agree with you. I'd like to see, someone who has character and stands for, certain principles and that type of thing. And you don't hear much about her. Although apparently she's done okay, been reelected, twice. So you assume the people in South Carolina thought she was okay. So,
Yeah.
and you haven't heard, I have not heard any, bad things about her. So she's, at least not a huge target. Um, you know, and maybe
So
that's a good place to be. Just somebody nondescript as a vice president. A lot of times that's what happens.
Yes.
That seems to be what makes a good vice president. Sometimes somebody who doesn't open their mouth and everybody just cringe, and yet somebody that's not so strong that they overpower, um, like Palin.
Mhm.
I would vote for Palin for president. She didn't do very good as a vice president because she was so outspoken, so much stronger than, yeah, who was it you ran with?
Yeah,
Not Dole. Another military guy.
Romney. Oh wait,
Goodness, that went blank. That went blank. I
yeah,
can see him, but
McCain.
McCain, yes.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's
I
just
think
my thought.
one of the
Might not
things
be a
about
bad vice president. I don't know anything, that would just not make her be, but there's nothing particularly outstanding about her.
yeah, what's I think had stated, if I'm remembering correctly, that she would not run if Trump ran again. But also she was in January 6th, she was like, "Oh, this is terrible. Trump, shouldn't have done that. Whatever." She was against the sort of stop the seal stuff until the Republicans kind of came together and said, "Okay, we're not gonna like vote to remove him and whatever or impeach him or anything based on this." So when the Republicans fell back in line, she fell back in line too, and so then she's
Hmm.
like, "Yeah, Trump was right," and all this kind of stuff, and just sort of like whatever. So she's really tried to be she's opportunistic. you know she says exactly what she's supposed to say when she's supposed to say it, and when she saw a weakness she jumped on it, but then there wasn't any coalition, there wasn't enough momentum around removing Trump, so then it was kind of like, okay, let's get back on the Trump train, and then now I think she sees him as pretty weak, pretty vulnerable, and that like a lot of people do with the documents, classified documents, there's several lawsuits that are pending on Trump, and I think that the Democrats are going to open that can of worms, and I think they see him very, vulnerable on the Republican side. So I think her calculation is, okay, now's my chance. If it's ever going to be. So it kind of seems like, why, but why? I know, I just don't understand. So,
Yeah.
My favorite thing is the current cascade of documents that keep being found and how they keep just being like, all right, everybody turn in your documents. This is ridiculous.
yeah, it's crazy. So, all right, well, we're going to wrap this episode. It's been fun when we jumped around a lot. We were a little bit more scattered. My topics are a little more scattered than usual, but really appreciate you guys watching, and we will see you next week on the Johnny Random Show.